Thanks, Councilmember Shade. I appreciate the opportunity to speak yet again to this illustrious committee, as well as I appreciated the opportunity a few weeks ago. It's a great project, right? So who doesn't mind watching it 4 times? It's Old Town Creek County Park is on Old Town Road. I'm the senior planner. My name is Matt Moldenhauer. I'm senior planner for Charleston County Parks. I do want to recognize that Diane Hamilton and Charlie were on the steering committee for an interpretive master plan that we did for this park. Diane and Charlie, I will not be going into any detail on the interpretation of the park. This is purely about development, just so you know. But as for this presentation, I'm going to describe a little bit about the background of the property. I'll talk about the master planning process that PRC went through. I'll talk about the site development, and then I'll finally hit on the frontage of the property, primarily the multi-use path that PRC wishes to construct along the front of the property. So without dwelling on it, I'll just acknowledge that we had a great project team led by the group at Stantec and Leolio Architects, and so that it's been a very long but great process involving many stakeholders in the community. As for the location of the property, it's immediately south of Charlestown Landing. For those of you that don't know, that's on Old Town Road, as I mentioned. So these are the brick gates that if you've driven on Old Town Road, they're the brick gates that are just south of Charlestown Landing. Maybe some of you have been to Wind Down Wednesday events at the property. If so, you know it very well. The property has a very long and extensive history, once associated with Charlestown Landing itself.
Hey Matt, maybe we should have a revitalization commission meeting at a Wind Down Wednesday pre-event.
I think that's a great idea. And by the way, you had a comment previously about having an open house on the property. I still need to circle back with you on that, but I'm hopeful we can make that happen.
Yep.
We've primarily focused on the 20th century history of the property under the ownership of Ashby and Emily Ravenel Farrow. So this was most recently a Ravenel-owned property, and that's sort of the heritage that we're honoring on the site. Through development in many ways. As Diane and Charlie know, the interpretation is much more complicated than that. But the structures, there are several structures and home sites on the property. Those are associated with the Ravenel occupation of the property. This is an aerial image of the property. It's 67 acres. And what you'll notice is that it's broken up into 2 parcels. One is 54 acres and one is 13 acres. That 13-acre parcel located adjacent to Old Town Road and south of Old Town Creek is not restricted by a conservation easement, whereas the other 54 acres are restricted by a conservation easement held by Historic Charleston Foundation. And so that just means we can and cannot build certain things in certain places on that property. We had a very extensive and comprehensive ecological study of the property to better understand how wildlife use it and the type of habitat it provides, which ultimately led to development of a land use plan you see in the lower right, and that tells us where we can and cannot build things on the site. The master planning process was quite extensive. We start all of our master planning processes by doing a very rigorous data collection phase. So that's surveys, wetland delineations, and then cultural and natural resources inventories. And then ultimately, we have a public workshop for the master plan where we get public input. And then we incorporate that public input into the final master plan. And the hope is that at the end of that process, that everybody's happy with the master plan, right? We do our best to accommodate what the public has requested after marrying that with staff and agency needs, as well as what the site will allow. So it's a complicated but fun process. After the master plan, we identify funding for the park, and then we take it through a rigorous and detailed design development process before ultimately building it. And so we are, if anybody's curious, we're right in this area here. So we're really close to building it. We're a few months away from initiating that process. So that's really exciting in the life of a park. Our public master planning process, our public input process began on July 20th, 2017. We had a meeting at Orange Grove Elementary, and then we had a public survey available afterwards. And just in general, the results of that public survey identified that people really want to focus on natural and cultural history on the site. They like seeing small events at the property like Wind Down Wednesdays. They like to be able to fish and crab at our parks. And as for facilities, they like trails. They really like bathrooms. And that always comes up as first as what the public wants at a park. And then we have boardwalks and nature viewing opportunities. So it's going to be a great park. We think we've accomplished all these things in the master plan. So we're starting to get into the site development phase, or the phase one development of the park. And I'm going to show details on some of these areas, but this is the master plan of the park. And as with most parks, there's a limited budget for development. And so phase one is going to be limited to certain things. We're working on what those items are, what those priorities are for phase one. But understand that everything I show you today will not necessarily be built as part of phase one. So just starting off, excuse me. I mentioned the historic, or the brick gates that are on Old Town Road. If you see where my pointer is, it says historic gates, right? Well, the new entrance is actually going to be further north on Old Town Road, and that will be designed for vehicles. So the existing entrance becomes a pedestrian entrance. I'll get into details on that later. But up that driveway, as you're entering that new driveway, off to your left would be an event pavilion. Notice it's on the unrestricted 13-acre parcel, and it has a parking lot, and it has a enclosed indoor venue for between 150 and 200 people. And I like to equate this to a founder's hall. So sometimes people will complain about noise from Charlestown Landing, but they're usually not complaining about Founders Hall. They're usually complaining about something that's happening outdoors. And so this is going to be enclosed. It's going to have acoustical panels. Like Peter said, it's not going to make noise. I obviously can't guarantee that, but I do know that it's a well-built structure that is designed not to be loud. And so continuing on the driveway, here's some images of what that'll look like. So this is a layout in the upper right-hand corner. This is a layout of that site. And you can see it's oriented down Old Town Creek. And then this is a covered porch on that building, and with a large lawn area. So it's a beautiful place. Will be a beautiful place one day for events. Continuing on the driveway, if you will, we end at a parking lot, which will be just leading you to the park center area. So if you've been to a Charleston County park, you know that there's usually a place where you check in, or you pay your $1 or $2, whatever it is. Maybe you buy a bottle of water, and then you can go about your journey in the park. And so that's this area. It really involves two structures. One is called we call it the rain hut, but it's really going to function as the park center. So that's this structure that you see in the upper right-hand corner. It is going to be renovated. It's going to have a long ramp that leads up to it for ADA accessibility. And that's where you're going to be able to check in. And there will be some artifacts on display. There will be some retail sales there. But then ultimately you walk out this door, and you'll be staring directly at the park center area. And there will be a map there for you to enjoy. Off to the side, just to the south of that, will be another building, a new building, which will be part restroom and part shelter. So the restrooms are this area where my pointer is right now. And then the open air shelter is obviously this other area where the picnic tables are. And that is going to face onto, here's a better view. This building where my pointer is that shelter and restroom building. And that's going to face onto this equestrian show ring you see is delineated by this white, in this graphic, it's a white fence. So Miss Emily Farrow, historically had a riding academy on the property called St. Andrew's Riding Academy. And so this show ring, equestrian show ring, is where that was part of that riding academy. Just as the rain hut building was a place where they could get out of the rain when it was raining while they were riding the horses. And so anyway, this field is delineated by the fence. And then this whole area is the park center area. So you see trails weaving in and out here. You see innovative stormwater management solutions. You see an enormous live oak, which actually exists on the site, and that's beautiful. And you see a playground, and you see an ADA accessible overlook that will overlook to Old Town Creek and other parts of the park. So we think this is a pretty striking graphic and helps to illustrate just how energetic this park center area will be. This is a plan view of that same area. And you see the park center building, you see the shelter, you see the play area, you see trails extending outward from there. And this is actually the start of a 1 mile accessible, ADA accessible trail that will follow the perimeter of the property. And so if you've been to a wind down Wednesday, by the way, this general area is probably where the next, post-construction, where the next wind down Wednesday will be. Because it really, being an energetic place, it facilitates that event well. The property, having an equestrian history, also has stables where they used to store horses. And so one of them is on the west, in which you see, and the second one is on the east, aptly named Stable 2. And they will both have a purpose when we build the park. Stable 1 is going to largely serve a maintenance and storage use for ongoing maintenance of the park. And then Stable 2 will actually have a trail routed right through the middle of it. So that'll be a neat shaded experience. There's also 2 historic structures on the property. These were from the early 1900s, and they are protected. The exterior of the buildings is protected by the conservation easement. One is called the main house, which is over here, and you see in the upper right-hand corner. And one is called the caretaker's house, which you see in the lower right-hand corner. And then there's also an overlook. This picture on the upper right is taken atop a bluff looking down onto a grass lawn, as you can see. And then in the background is Old Town Creek. And then the woods in the very back is actually Charlestown Landing that you see way back there. And so from an interpretive perspective, we're doing what we can to understand the property's historical connections to Charlestown Landing. And we think if we can tell that story effectively, this is probably where it would be told. And then in the lower right, you can see the dock. We're starting to get into the conversation about the frontage of the property. So I mentioned the brick gates. In the upper right-hand corner, you see a picture of the existing entrance. And in the lower right-hand corner, you see an image of what we hope that will look like, a rendering of what that could look like. And again, this is the pedestrian entrance, so you'll be able to walk or bike through those gates. When the park opens, there will be a timer that will open the gates and you'll be able to enter. And so there will be seating, we hope, so that you can, if you get there early or you want to meet some friends, you could sit there. So the vehicular entrance north of that on Old Town Road is, you can see the yellow box here. So you see a lot of scrub, and this is what we hope it will look like when it's actually built. So that'll be a divided entrance. So both of those images that you saw show a multi-use path, or a 10-foot wide path that will allow bikes and pedestrians to utilize that corridor actively. And so we anticipated that this would be a highly trafficked corridor. And so we've tried to work that multi-use path into our planning efforts. And several other plans have also identified that, as you're aware. The county is investing a lot of money in building multi-use paths just north of the park. And they've already committed to building paths to connect to the park. And so it's worthwhile to point out that the existing sidewalk that's there is only 4.5 feet, which doesn't meet the current standard by DOT. It's encroached on by plants that kind of whack you in the face when you're walking by. And it's very maintenance intensive. And so we want to do something differently. In this image, you can see there's a red line. That red line indicates the edge of the right of way for Old Town Road. And then you can see where the path starts to meander away from the road. And then it comes back toward the road at the vehicular entrance. It goes away from the road and then back toward the road in front of the big brick gates. And so we're really trying to get people away from the road when we can, because that's a safer experience. But when you build a 10-foot path and you meander it like that, and then you have constraints like a limited right of way and a need to maintain the active drainage swale along the road, and you have power lines that require regular maintenance, there's an inevitable need to remove trees. And I mean, I know what I think when I look at the tree in the picture, but that's an example of some of the trees that may need to go as part of the park construction. And so we don't know that we're gonna propose removing all trees along the frontage, but what I do know is that we're conducting an assessment to understand the health and safety risk of having those trees there along the frontage. So maybe you've seen the recent maintenance work along the front of the park. Again, we're studying the health of those trees. And once we have that report, that will really help to influence how many trees we end up removing for the multi-use path alignment. But we're confident that people will enjoy the multi-use path, understanding that there may be some consequences to the trees that are there on the site. And so with that, the next steps in the project, we're going to wrap up all design work and our permitting process. We're identifying our priorities for phase 1 construction, and we really want to break ground on the park in mid-2021. And we'll continue interim programs like Wind Down Wednesday until we actually break ground. And so as a plug for Wind Down Wednesday, here's the next several events. And there's no on-site registration, so purchase your tickets online. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions about this? And one of the main concerns that Matt's talking about is the removal of some of those trees. And I think haven't you been working with Dominion, Matt, about maybe even relocating some of those wires, those lines? I've talked to Danny Cassis, and burying the lines are just very, very expensive on doing that. So maybe $500,000 to bury some of those lines. I see that Justin's got his hand up.
Yeah,
sure.
His virtual hand up.
So I guess thanks for the summary. What's the budget and the timeline for completion look like?
The budget is less than 10 million, and the timeline for completion, we hope if we break ground middle of this year that it'll take less than 2 years to build.
Is the budget a budget that has to now be requested for allocation, or that's pre-baked and spendable break ground once you've got your pricing?
It's a firm budget, at least as far as the base bid is concerned, but if it's not imperative to know it on this call, I prefer not to mention it.
I guess I meant, has the city allocated and earmarked specific funds, or do you now have to request from city and county?
No, the Charleston County Parks it's an independent agency, and the funding has already been set aside.
Matt.
Yeah.
Matt.
Thank you very much. I
Yep, thank
appreciate
you.
Hello, Matt.
Yes,
Mary Peters here.
hey, Mary.
Mary.
Hi, what relationship do you hope to show between Charlestown Landing and this project?
So without going into too much detail, Mary, what I'll tell you is that Charlestown Landing tells a very complete story about kind of pre-1800s on that site, right? And so our story is really going to try to complement that in the way that it sort of picks up the storytelling after that. We're trying to tell a more recent history of the property and the surrounding area, for that matter. So it's really a more comprehensive story about West Ashley. And the one specific connection I was trying to imply to Charlestown Landing is that obviously they were part of one property at a given point in time. We think there may have been some movement by either enslaved persons or other people associated with the settlement between the two properties. And we're actually in the process of doing some research on that, but at this point it's inconclusive. But I would say that, you know, from a speculation standpoint, it's almost, you know, it's pretty logical that people would have moved back and forth between the two.
Well, you got Diane Hamilton on the commission. She can probably fill in those blanks for us, because we know that there was a huge connection with Charlestown Landing and suspect this property and Maryville, Asheville, right, Ms. Hamilton?
Yes, the area that is located at what is now Main Street and Fifth Avenue was the Lord Proprietor's property, where the second proprietary governor, Joseph West, had his home built, and also land was situated there for the experiment with farming projects and whatnot. So there's that direct connection there across Old Town Creek.
And you even, there's a resident, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a resident in Maryville or Ashleyville that's a descendant of somebody that worked on this property.
Yes.
And we hope to speak to them soon.
Nathan Bennett was one of the persons I interviewed and trying to learn more about my community. And he spent, he was a close person who was associated with the family, the Farrell family, and he lived actually 2 streets from me. His daughter still lives at the family home now. And he was able to provide me with some information about the connection. And then you had a number of individuals who lived in the Maryville, Asheville area who worked on the Ravenel farm. And if you go through the Farrell papers, we have actually found some of the worksheets that identified the individuals, how much they were paid per week. And I was able to recognize some of those names as being individuals who lived in the Maryville, Asheville area.
Hey, Matt, can you take off your share screen? So I can't see. I see the mayor's got his hand up, but I can't see the rest of the, thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Matt,
Were you calling on me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. And actually, Matt, I don't know if you can share it again. I kind of wanted you to go back to that image you had of the iron gates, the pedestrian access. Sure. And by the way, first of all, let me say thank you. And I believe the park will be just a tremendous asset to West Ashley and to the city. And we're just really looking forward to y'all getting this underway and open. It's going to be terrific. Now, conveniently, you know, designers like to draw pretty pictures and they often will leave the wires out. So I'm presuming all along here, all along the path, at present, the wires are not being planned to go underground. They're still going to be up there, right?
They will be up there. Yeah, that's not part of the budget.
Right. And so I'm told that the wires along here, there's some lower hanging wires, but then the upper wires are what they call higher transmission, higher voltage. And, you know, we've had a lot of concerns about the way that Dominion trims around their power lines. And just to let everybody know, they have like carte blanche when it's high transmission lines, basically to cut whatever they want to. And case in point, now go to the image of that tree, that poor tree that you mentioned a minute ago. My wife and I were riding by the other day, and I mean, she made the observation, hey, look, when it gets to that point, are we better off just starting all over again and planting some different species and different kinds of planting so that you don't have to have this kind of trimming occur even years from now. So you plant things, you can see the difference in the wires there, right? So I think Dominion would tell you, Peter, that to underground those things might not even be possible, or if it's possible, the cost would be just out the wazoo. So I was a little sensitive about this proposal just because of the trees. I love trees, but I got to tell y'all, in reviewing it and looking at the beautification of the entry and the path being connected with the other work that the county's doing and widening it to 4 to 10 feet, I personally feel like it's worth the removal of trees like this and restore with something more beautiful. And yes, you'll have to plant some new stuff, but that will start over again, but won't grow so tall. And I thought it was important just to put that out on the table and ask for everyone's thoughts on that, because no matter what we do, we'll get some pushback from the public. And if we really support the county parks and this project and what they're proposing here for the walkway and Old Town Road, I think we'll all want to stand up and support them in what's being presented here and the plans going forward. So anyway, I throw that out for conversation and comment, and I'm very supportive, and thank you, Matt, for coming and presenting this again. I know it might be a repeat for some folks, but I thought it was important for us to talk about this issue.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, thank you for those comments. And I think that that's sort of the reality of what you're saying. And I have been in contact with Danny Cassis about this. And you know, the less expensive way and probably the less intrusive way is to move these lines back off away from the road, which may mean it goes back into the park, which may be less intrusive, but at least you're getting away from the need to trim these trees more. And you're right, when you see a tree like this at this particular point, you go, you know, what's the sense of trying to save that anymore? It's so butchered.
So yeah. if I could comment on that, Danny had offered that they could pull them back, Councilmember Shayed, but right. the consequence to that is that, just speaking generally, the quality of the trees inside the park is much exponentially higher than the quality of the trees you see on the screen.
Well, that's a good point to bring out, Matt, because what we don't want to do is create a worse problem than where we are right now. Right,
and you know, what you see on the screen is pretty indicative or typical of what's on the rest of the corridor. You know, I'm not an arborist, but when the arborist looked at it, he said, you know, you could justify taking every one of the trees because they all lean toward the road, they all lean toward the sidewalk, and they're all imbalanced. And when you have saturated soil, like a lot of us have had lately, you know what happens to an imbalanced tree in wet soil. And so I'm not presuming to know the outcome of that report, but what I do know is that we don't have ideal trees along the front of the park. So we look forward to getting that and being able to make some well-founded and informed decisions.
Justin, I see your hand's back up. And Matt, I need to go back to the full screen again, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, Justin.
No, I mean, look, I love the overall holistically and in a utilitarian way, like this is amazing. To Mayor Tecklenburg's point, and it may surprise some, but as a developer, I mean, I love trees. And as a Charlestonian, I mean, nothing beats a grand oak. And, I'll sort of, be funny and have backhanded statement, but, calling an arborist to look at a leaning tree and designate it leaning after you just beat it up and pushed it over leaning is like asking an arsonist to inspect the house for structural stability after they set the fire. So I take that with a grain of salt.
That's a great analogy, Justin.
I guess my point's, look, if they're there, that's fine, but that's not how the tree looked. Like, so if there are hard decisions to be made, but I believe in a net neutrality of if you're going to take down a tree, it's got to be one for one. You got to put back some new ones, like the mayor was saying his wife suggested. So, I mean, I would highly suggest, especially since this came through the land conservation, Low Country Land Trust partially, that front and center, that there's some environmental net neutrality with regard to trees. I mean, that's where I rode my bike as a kid. I love sidewalks, but I hate power lines. So it'd be a shame to do $10 million of beauty and have, stains on the front of your shirt before you walk in with an Armani suit. So I'd make sure we iron the front of that suit with a little bit of money for trees.
Full of analogies this afternoon.
Yeah, well,
Good ones.
Yes, very good one.
I don't know what the species are, but I mean, I know you can't make grand oaks appear out of nowhere, but if I wanted to cut down a grand oak, I have to do one for one, or there's a very clear, $1,000 per inches of caliper trade-off. And I get the city and county are different, but the intent of the ordinances that developers have to follow exists for a reason. So, palms are easy, oaks can't grow overnight, crepe myrtles are sort of cheap. The DOT will let you do crepe myrtles because they treat them as a bush, which is a fun tidbit you can learn. They treat them as a bush, so y'all don't have to deal with the liability of a car hitting them because they're a bush instead of a tree. But I'd say do something to make the front look as beautiful as everything else y'all have done.
I can tell you that the city, no disrespect to the city, but we're having to follow the same permitting process as everybody else does. And so when the trees are assessed by city staff, in terms of the degree of mitigation, they undergo the same type of evaluation. So that decision is ultimately up to city staff.
All right. Thanks, Justin, and for those observations, and Mayor, for your comments on that. I think we're at the reality point with these trees. Yeah. So somebody else has got their hand up?
Mr. Smith raised his hand briefly.
Oh, there you are, Charlie. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt, it was a real pleasure to work with you all. Diane Hamilton and Donna Jacobs and I worked with Matt and Adam and the consultants on the interpretation. I'm particularly pleased with what you all have done with the property already and what the plans are. The plans look wonderful, and I totally agree on the tree issue up front and making that entrance really beautiful, but I don't really see anything where the trees are concerned that's salvageable at that point. But it does kind of beg the question, if you are improving the entrance to this park and widening that county sidewalk and making it more accessible, it's important that the connectivity of that be particularly good. And the logical place to connect that is the Maryville Bikeway. And I think most of us know that that's a really difficult connection to make, but we've got to figure out a way to make that connection and get what I hope would be a safe crossing at that point, because that is what allows everybody to have access to the assets that the city, the county, and the state have on that side of the road, and we can't even get to it. So if we're gonna look at the improvement of the frontage in front of the county park, I think we need to take a multi-jurisdictional approach to the connectivity from there all the way back up to the Maryville Bikeway. You can't cross there, and I know we've had the discussions and the plans for improving the access at Sycamore, but that's another half-mile farther for people to connect from the bikeway. It just doesn't make sense to have the bikeway there if you can't get to that side of the road. And with the plans that you all are doing that are going to be beautiful in front of that space, it just seems that we all ought to be working toward the connectivity of the city, county, and state properties on that side of the road.
Charlie, we're on the same page. We recognize the significance of that connection, and as an agency, we can only do a little bit by requesting the county's assistance, but we keep requesting assistance.
Right, and I understand y'all have limited ability to deal with this, but that's why West Ashley Revitalization Commission becomes so important, is because this is a place where multiple jurisdictions sit down to talk about West Ashley. And we've had discussions with the city and the county and the state, frankly, about that crossing there. And it's just so important that we not walk away from that and leave that lack of connectivity like it is. It just, it's a waste of really wonderful assets on that side of the highway. But thank you for all the work that you all are doing. And I'm very pleased with where we are so far and excited that we're this close to building.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for your comments.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody. And I think we're going to have to do a little bit of a PR work on this with Matt. If those trees are going to come down, I think what the mayor said is, well, we need a bottle and get that communication out to the general public of where we stand with this thing. And it's just, I like Justin's comment, you want to make sure your shirt is ironed and as you come to the front door when you put that suit on. So anyhow.
Hey, Matt, there was a question for you in the chat box.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Okay.
When you open, will there be an entrance fee just to enter the park?
So you'll actually pay once you get to the interior of the park. So that building I mentioned as the park center, the rain hut, that's where you'll pay. So you'll be able to walk down the Alley of Oaks. You'll take a left, and it's basically based on the honor system.
Okay, thank you.
But you don't have to pay when you go for a jog through there.
You need connections.
I'll be running too fast for them to catch me.
What I'll say truthfully is, if you have a gold pass, which is a pass you can buy that gets you into all county parks, then no, you would not need to check in there. But if you're visiting as an individual on an individual basis, you would need to check in at the park center.
Look who's got one.
Carl's got one. There you go.
Well done.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I
Yes, sir.
apologize. I have a family commitment tonight. We got a birthday in the family, so I got to sign off. But thanks everyone for your service, and Matt, thanks again for the presentation.
And thank you, Mayor, for those comments. I think those were very useful and it helps us get a different direction. So
Great. Thank y'all.
happy birthday. All right. We're on to branding and design principles. Eric, you gonna pick
Yes,
up
sir.
on that?
So the next two elements are updates on just two of our work groups that have been meeting over the past few weeks, months. And so for those, it's the branding and identity group. We're working forward on we're moving forward, I should say, on the economic development incentive, or not incentive, but economic development package, a PDF that would showcase why people should choose West Ashley to locate their business. With that, we have kind of a 4-tiered approach that I've worked through with our consultant on it. And so some of the things that we're going to be highlighting on it are the history of the St. Andrew area and the history of entrepreneurship and business in the area. We're going to be focusing on small businesses. We will also be focusing on why large employers should locate here. And then also just a general biography and contact information for the city. So the small business and large employer are kind of going to be building on each other, because every large employer is going to want to see a robust small business economy. And what we're trying to do is kind of provide, again, supplemental information to what your standard commercial real estate agent or broker could pull up for someone. So this would not be specifically, you know, how many cars travel down a road or how many households are in this neighborhood, but it will be looking past that to other reasons why to locate here. So some of the things that Justin has mentioned and Ashley has brought up at those meetings have been things like, you know, it's we're centrally located to get to North Charleston, to get to Mount Pleasant, to get to downtown, to get to everywhere where there is large manufacturing warehouses, things of that nature. Literally 5 to 10 minutes from the airport is a big one for us. And just also the general environment of West Ashley when it comes to businesses, and having a little bit of a lower threshold for cost of construction, of land development prices, things of that nature. Ashley or Justin, anything to add on that? And I think I'm forgetting someone for the branding one. And if I am, I'm sorry.
You may want to put that into a form of a document to email to everybody, Eric, because that was a lot that you just went through. And, I always complain to Eric that when I talk to him, I feel like I'm getting a glass of water out of a fire hose. He gives me he always gives me a lot of information, which means he's very thorough and very in depth with what we get. But I think that's kind of critical as to how which you've got listed, and then how we implement that and follow through with that.
As we construct the document, you guys will be getting draft versions of it, so you'll get to see a little bit better. But if you want, I can do up a big outline so you can look it over.
Okay. Ms. Peters, your hand up. You muted.
One of the things we talked about, Eric, was the beautification of the entranceways to West Ashley.
Yes, we did talk about that. And actually, I think we talked more about that one during our next one with the design principles. But yes, that is a component of both of those. Will be encouraging ownership and betterment of those gateways. So as the chairman said, I kind of unleashed a floodgate on you with that one. But if anyone does have any input or direct questions right now, happy to talk to you. I'm also happy to talk anytime after this if you feel like there's a angle that we should put onto the PDF packet to market West Ashley.
Comments, questions, suggestions, ideas? Okay. All right.
So the next one for the design principles, this is a kind of an overlapping group. A lot of the same people are on this one. And what we've been doing with that is following through on a Plan West Ashley implementation idea, which was acknowledging that to update our DRB ordinance itself would be a very laborious and costly task. So instead, get a document put together that would give developers and builders a better idea when they first come in what the West Ashley community is looking for based off of what is in Plan West Ashley. So in that one, we've been trying to balance both what is in the plan in terms of some of the inspirational elements, and then also with the market realities, which Justin really helps us out with the market reality segment frequently. So for that one, we have about, I would say, 2 out of the 5 areas that we're focusing on kind of fleshed out right now, thinking about, we've broken out West Ashley into gateway areas, which is one element that Ms. Peters brought up, gateway areas, as well as kind of secondary neighborhood hubs. And then there's going to obviously be the commercial areas in between. And then you have the areas outside 526 that have to have their own feeling to it, because what's inside 526 is much more urbanized. I wouldn't say it's urban, but it's more urbanized than say outside 526, where you have a more country aspect to it, a little bit more relaxed, more natural feel with regards. As we work through that, again, I'll be sending you all some drafts. And Justin, see your hand kind of going up? No?
Are you thinking?
So with that one again, if anyone has any comments, questions, or concerns, or if anyone from the group would like to kind of relay what we've been discussing, feel free.
Anybody questions, comments, suggestions? Okay.
All right,
All
so
right.
that will take us to our next item, which would be the West Ashley Commissioner Initiative. So this is a agenda item I put on the agenda. And the idea was to kind of highlight some of what our commissioners are working on. In addition to helping me with these work groups, a lot of them are active in the community, promoting it and making it a better place and a place that people are more aware of. So I will go ahead and let Ms. Tidestrom talk about the first item, which is Keep West Ashley Beautiful.
Hi,
Thank
Teresa.
you. Hi. So last year I spoke with Councilman Peter Shade. I spoke to the mayor, and with Brantley Moody from the city. I'm sorry, from the county. And it was basically to come up with a project to get rid of the litter on a continuous basis instead of a one-shop deal. So we have partnered with Keep Charleston Beautiful, Charleston County's Community Pride, Inc., which also encompasses the Adopt a Highway program for Charleston County within that, and with the Charleston Parks Conservancy. And out of that has been born Keep West Ashley Beautiful. So we have 11 sector team captains, all with helpers who are going to organize sweeps. These sweeps, all items, gloves, bags, vests, reachers. We had 24 reachers donated by Gail Lanter. It's been an amazing, just everybody working together. So the ultimate goal is to have at minimum one sweep in one of the sectors each month, along with one sweep on either the Greenway or the Bikeway or both, at least once a month as well. So that would be 2. The Greenway and the Bikeway projects, those are going to be more highlighted with more people representing different portions from the beginning all the way down to the end, and keeping it going on a continuous pattern. This is not a one-time deal. This is hopefully as long as it can continue. Each sweep will be put on social media so that we can get more involvement and inclusion. And keeping this short, if anybody has any questions, please reach out to me.
So Teresa, a couple of thoughts. This is a great idea. and I'm glad you're spearheading this. I'm looking at Mary Peters, because there are a bunch of very young activists in her complex that she's living in, who take, and I'm throwing my mother-in-law's name into this as well, but they take advantage of that bikeway. And so you may have a very good captive audience there who you can tap into if you haven't already thought about that.
Yep.
I mean, they would love to do that. I think it's an activity they can get engaged in. And so I'm looking at Mary for approval, but that's a workforce that is concentrated over there. And I think I saw this, Teresa, but I think you had also targeted North Bridge Park, the area underneath the bridge. And if you haven't been out there, the level of activity with folks there is really rather impressive, particularly on nice Sunday afternoons. It is a huge activity, which is then a problem because the trash cans get overflowed real quickly. People throwing the trash on the ground. When I go out there, people park for a sunrise or a sunset, and you can see where they just throwing out their beverage or food containers on the ground. They don't even bother to put it in the receptacle. And there were some folks who were feeding some critters out there too. So anyhow,
Well, we have four individuals right now that are going out twice a week and checking the trash cans on top of who's supposed to be checking them and replacing the bags. And so we also have a second cleanup along with this, and Orange Grove Road is actually one of the pilot roads. So we have partnered with SCDOT to isolate 2 secondary roads. With these roads, we are going to, the people that are doing the sweeps, go a little bit further. We're going to remove the overgrown vegetation and bring it back down to a natural state, and then do some natural plantings, bushes, ground cover, getting away from them having to come out and mow where it looks even worse before they started. So that's 2 projects that are going to be going on simultaneously. And Orange Grove is part of the pilot.
Excellent. Thank you, Teresa. Does anyone have any questions for her?
Teresa, thank you. There's Carl Brady. He's got his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just wanted to commend Teresa on this. I know we've been going back and forth over Facebook Messenger because I think one of the things, you know, at least the second largest complaint I get after, hey, my garbage hasn't been picked up, is, hey, there's garbage everywhere. And I think COVID's kind of thrown a wrench in things, in that, people aren't wanting to get out and gather in groups as much. The state's not sending some of the inmate labor crews out along state maintained roads. And it's just really become a problem kind of all over the area. And so I just want to commend Teresa for putting this together, and look forward to volunteering on some stuff as it comes out. And I'll be out at the circle cleanup, at least for the first part of the morning, in 2 weeks. So look forward to it.
Yes, so on Saturday, the 20th will be the first one, although this program does not officially kick off until the 24th of April, which is 2 days after Earth Day. But next weekend, not this one, next weekend, we're having a major West Ashley Circle cleanup with many of the council members that represent that district, homeowners that we're going to work with Walmart. We're working with the property owners. We actually got permission from 2 property owners to go ahead and cross their lines and help get the trash picked up. And Councilman Brantley Moody did arrange for one of the trucks to be there to collect the trash when we're done. And that's at 9 a.m.
So Teresa, are you going to send out a schedule for everybody to have? And so if they want to sign up, and okay.
Absolutely.
And Eric, you help her circulate that, I presume? Okay, all right. Are you, do you want to do a grand opening kind of ceremony with this, Teresa?
I would love to do that on the 24th of April.
Okay.
Then Miss Jackrell has her hand up digitally.
Oh, yeah, Ashley, there you go. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman. This actually came up about a year ago with some friends of mine who are joggers, and they basically choose different routes near their house to pick up trash along their run. And they said, you know, we have a lot of friends who would like to do this too, but they don't necessarily have the availability to join a Saturday morning pickup that's an organized event. And so we kind of started thinking, well, maybe if there was some sort of like a public Google spreadsheet or something that people could go to see what routes have been done recently and where the need is. So I just thought that this would be a great opportunity to float that if there's any bandwidth to incorporate something like that into this program.
Absolutely. And we can also include if anybody needs supplies for that. All of that can be put on a Google spreadsheet with no problem.
That would be awesome. Let's circle up about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Ms. Hamilton's up next on her book.
Okay. I would like to give you an update as well as provide a little background for those persons who may not be familiar with the project. Maryville, The Audacity of a People, the book which tells the story of how people we would describe as essential workers in today's terms created a community and a town, is complete. As a matter of fact, I returned my first set of corrections of the proof at 1:30 a.m. this morning. The striking thing is that all of this occurred 9 years after Reconstruction ended in 1877 and during the implementation of Jim Crow laws which disenfranchised African Americans. The story begins with the founding of Charleston in 1670. Joseph West, as I mentioned earlier, was the second proprietary governor of the colony, and his home was on land located across Old Town Creek that became the town of Maryville in 1886 and an incorporated town by the General Assembly, South Carolina General Assembly in 1888. Today, this area is known as Ashleyville. The people held yearly elections for intendants/mayors. They established a police force with a police station on Fifth Avenue, and the town officials were African Americans. I've been able to identify some of the police officers, such as Mr. William Wigfall, Board of Health members, town clerks, several mayors such as Isaac Bryant, James Judon, Milton Grant, and Thomas Tobias Carr. The overwhelming majority of the citizens were Black, but a few whites lived in the community, as well as 2 Asians. They were brothers. This venture started when I asked the question about 10 years ago, what did my neighborhood look like prior to the construction of St. Andrews Boulevard? The answer led me to discover that I live in a historic neighborhood. This information was revealed through interviews with many of the senior citizens, the oldest being 99 years old, trips to Avery Research Center, the South Carolina Archives in Columbia, the Record of Deeds offices in both Berkeley and Charleston counties. Newspapers such as the News and Courier and the Evening Post provided information about the daily lives of the people. I learned about the contributions of the 2 Marys, one white and one Black, without whom there would probably not have been a town. Mary Bowen Taft, white, sold her property, Hillsborough Plantation, to mostly African Americans, lots of about 50 by 100 to build homes. Mary Matthews Just, African American, encouraged people to buy the lots, was elected the first female postmistress in 1892, and was one of 3 trustees for the property on which Frederick Deming Industrial School for Blacks was built, also in 1892. She served as teacher and principal. The school was closed in 1953 when Wallace Consolidated School opened. I also discovered about 3 years ago that 3 other persons were researching various aspects of my neighborhood and West Ashley. We started.
We lost you,
We lost you, Miss Hamilton.
Ms. Hamilton. Diane,
We cannot hear you yet.
Ms. Hamilton, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
I'm at the end.
There you go. We can hear you.
Now we
Um,
can.
Yeah, the last part we heard was something about three people who were
At
helping.
the very end, the history buddies, and of course that's Donna Jacobs, Charlie Smith, and Ina Boodle. Also, we have been working with the International African American Museum. We were working on a project that was supposed to have gone up in February, sharing the information about Maryville, but it was such a massive project, they were not able to complete it in February, but it will be going up. So, and we've been on local radios. I'm also sharing the information because we believe that this is information that should be shared for the greater community. And I thank you for this opportunity to let me talk about my neighborhood. Thank you.
So, Ms. Hamilton, I just forwarded an email to you and to Charlie and Donna Jacobs on an email exchange I've been having with Bishop Edwards, the pastor over at the church on Orange Grove Road. So I'd like to follow up on the discussion with you on some historical component of Orange Grove Road with that. But so your book is coming out when, or am I behind on understanding?
Hopefully, I would think within the next few weeks. As I said, I sent the corrections to the proof late 1:30 this morning. And once that is done, then it will go to press. So it should be available ASAP.
So, Ms. Hamilton, I'm going to be greedy and
Yes.
like to kind of incorporate that in what we've got left over with our 350 commemoration.
Okay.
I think that is, and I just sent a text, an email message to Scott Watson and to Jonathan Green about, as you were talking, because I think this is a great opportunity to highlight that and put the 350 commission behind that as well.
Okay, sounds good.
You are the untold, Maryville Asheville is the untold story of the history of Charleston.
This is definitely true, and that's why we want to make that connection. When we look at 1670, when the English, those Lord Proprietors came, African Americans came along with them because they came by way of Barbados, and they brought the first 3 persons of African descent with them in 1670. So we started this journey together, and we are still working on this journey now. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. All right, any other comments on what either Teresa has brought to our attention or Ms. Hamilton? All right.
If I could, sir, just any other commissioner who's on, if you are doing something similar to this and you want to have some time, please let me know, and I'm happy on our schedule to kind of have this be a recurring element, because I do think that's necessary for the public to know that y'all are diligently working on things in our community.
Eric, I was just going to mention that our new director of planning is listening in on us. Robert, if you want to unmute and video yourself to introduce to the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. I'm sure Eric has given you updates on this and the work we've been doing in the past.
Of the briefest terms.
Yeah. Eric and I just met this morning. His background was a little different, So hi to everyone. My name is Robert Summerfield. I'm the new director of planning, preservation, and sustainability. You guys are doing some amazing work. That book sounds like that will be an awesome read. I like history a lot, so getting tidbits that you don't always get in a lot of the other material is always awesome. So I look forward to seeing that when it comes available. My office is there at 2 George. I'm available as well to work with Eric on anything that you all might have. So please feel free to reach out to me. I will be learning more about West Ashley and the work that the commission is doing here over the next coming weeks, and I hope to participate and help y'all as you're continuing to revitalize that important area of the community.
Thanks for joining us and listening in. And looks like you're driving, so be careful.
Yes, I am driving, and I haven't been watching. I didn't see anything about the park or any of that. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that PowerPoint at some point in the future.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Eric, any other?
Miss Hamilton has her hand raised.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
One quick update. I would like to acknowledge that the funds for the publication of the book was provided by the Center for Heirs Property Preservation. We were given a grant. I was going to do it out of pocket, but the grant came along through that organization. So the Center for Heirs Property Preservation provided the funds for the publication. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, Eric, we have any other business we need to review?
We have 2 more agenda items. We have the public comment period, which we do have 1 phone call for me to read off, 1 email, and 1 comment that was submitted online. We have a few more through the Q&A, and we do have a attendee who has raised their hand.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and get started. Ms. Marcia Higgins, who is the Maryville Ashleyville president, gave me a phone call today. She wanted me to relay to you all that she has concerns about the 829 St. Andrews DRB project that will be coming to the DRB on Monday, the 15th. It is coming for a conceptual review. Her concerns, though, are not really in the vein of what the design review board can discuss or make recommendations on. Her concerns are related to the traffic flow and how that will be impacting Sycamore Avenue and St. Andrews Boulevard. So I've already gotten her in touch with Michael Mathis in the city regarding the project. They have not submitted a traffic study to us as of yet, mainly because they're still at the conceptual stage. They've had 1 technical review committee meeting so far and had just a basic traffic study done. As they move through the project, they'll have to get more details on it. In addition to that, I also got her in touch with Megan Smith from Charleston County, who is the county transportation engineer in charge of the Sycamore and St. Andrews improvement that I think Mr. Smith brought up regarding the bikeway, and that will also have some improvements relating to traffic flow for vehicular as well, which I need to have an update on that project also. So I'm interested to see what Megan will come back to us with. So that was the phone call. Email.
And as you're doing that, just to remind everybody, and I think Eric mentioned this, the design review board is meeting on March 15th to receive comments, to receive the revised presentation for St. Andrews development, the old
Yes, sir.
Ryan Steakhouse.
Yes, sir. And so before I go to the email, that presentation, I believe, is available on the design review board website for the city of Charleston. And if you want, I can send around a link to the presentation so y'all can see that. So we have an email from a Thomas Jones who lives at 55 Eaton Road. His comments are regarding the West Ashley Gateway, that is Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and Old Town Road from the North Bridge to the merge with St. Andrews Boulevard. Number 1, the median between Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and Campion Hall Road remains overgrown with vines and dead tree logs. For years, it has been used by Campion Hall residents as a dumping ground for leaves and yard debris, which can be pushed up into bushes. The area has been for years a collection point for litter and a favorite place for motorists to throw beer cans and bottles. Why does the city continue to neglect this eyesore while professing to revitalize West Ashley? Number 2, Dominion has outdone SCE&G with the recent butchering of the trees along Old Town Road. What has been done to these grand trees has now rendered them grotesque for years to come with likely no chance of recovery. In my opinion, removal of most all is sadly the only near-time solution. This will be no gateway to be proud of if these trees remain, just a Charleston embarrassment. Regarding the Sam Rittenberg Campion Hall, I forwarded this comment along to our Director of Parks, along with the Public Service Director of Public Service, if I speak correctly. And they are already looking into it. They've noticed that there were a few dead tree trunks, along with some additional buildup of debris that they're looking into how to remove it right now.
He also emailed me, Eric, and I forwarded those comments to them as well earlier too. So, and he's right that people use that as a place to throw trash out who live on the other side of that grassy median, and you can count the number of beer cans that are just tossed out apparently as motors are going by. So and some of the residents over there kind of like that the bushy area because it serves as a barrier and a buffer for traffic, but it's got to be cleaned out. It's just not an attractive area, and so I'll follow back up and press Jason and Mr. O'Brien, Tom O'Brien with both of those. I'm glad. Send that to me if you don't mind as well. It sounds a little different than what he has sent me, but very similar comments.
Yes, sir, will do.
Thank you.
And then the one comment that was submitted for our Innovate Charleston page is from Jennifer Singleton, who lives on Chairwood Drive. Given that the new flood maps have been redrawn, a lot of residents in West Ashley area are now forced to flood insurance coverage. What is the city stormwater department going to do to address the archaic ditch system that runs through many neighborhoods in West Ashley, including West Oak Forest and DuPont Station? The ditch system is overgrown with leaves from trees and growth that does not get regularly maintained. Overflow from these ditches causes dramatic water and flooding to our yards. So that one I need to send along to Matt Fountain, but he does have a logical list that he's moving through very methodically, updating and rehabilitating ditches and swales along public roads in conjunction with SCDOT and county when necessary. And that is it for those comments. Of our questions, Ms. Donna Jacobs asked when the website for the Ashley River Bike Ped Bridge will be live. That the answer to that is shortly. Last I talked with the project manager for the Bike Ped Bridge. They have secured a engineering consultant engineer to do 30% design work on the bridge. And so that 30% design work will cover, will be basically figuring out where the path can go, where do they need to put pylons, what type of pylons need to go in, all of those types of elements. So that way, after the 30%, they can get a better idea of how much the bridge will cost and then move on further into the project. It sounds like whenever we talk about that project, it sounds like it's a very that's behind schedule, but it's actually right on schedule for a federal DOT project. They have a lot of steps and hoops that they have to jump through. Then it looks like Katie Zimmerman kind of gave an answer to Donna's question as well, which I just reiterated, that we are hoping to have that website up around April. And Ms. Jacobs also had the comment of Secretary Hall has signed a complete street initiative for SCDOT. They may now be more receptive to a hawk signal at the bikeway. That's one that we will have to look into with our Director of Transportation, along with our DOT coordinator here for the city area. And then we do have one attendee who has raised their hand. So I'm going to go ahead and Miss McAdams, I am going to allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute now.
Oh, am I unmuted? Hi.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, hi. Yes, my name is Molly McAdams, and I have a question for Miss Hamilton. Miss Hamilton, where are your books going to be located? Will you be allowing small businesses to sell your books?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Right now, I'm looking at Amazon, but I don't have it all ironed out just yet. But just keep in contact with me and I will be able to give you that information. And thank you for your question.
Yes, my business is located very close to Maryville, so I'd love to carry them when the time comes. If you would like.
Yes,
And yes, ma'am.
okay. If you will contact me, we could exchange emails after this is over. I will be
Yes,
glad
ma'am.
to discuss that with you. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. And my other question was for Ms. Tydstrom, with the cleanup crew. My business is always has to work on Saturday. But so I was wondering, instead of having the staff come out there, if y'all would like a sponsorship of some sort, or if I could maybe email a flyer for the 24th, and I will start distributing them in my West Ashley business to the community, so they'll all be able to show up, maybe give them out. I probably get a pretty good through traffic, probably about 100 people a week coming through. I wouldn't mind handing something out, and I would print them all myself if you'd like.
Thanks for those comments, Ms. McAdams. Appreciate you sharing those with us.
Thanks. I can't hear Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa.
Oh, she's unmuted. Muted.
I was just talking away.
She's acknowledging. She's just acknowledging.
Yes.
Thank you.
If you could email me at Teresa, TERESA at westashleyconnects.org.
Okay.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome. And so you're also the one that heads the West Ashley Connects Facebook page.
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, I'm a regular on that page, so it's nice to see a face with the name.
Thanks, Molly.
Sure.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else, Eric?
That looks like it'll do it for public comments, which will just bring us to our last agenda item of other business, which this is just a chance, since I make this agenda, a week to 2 weeks out, this is a chance if there's anything else for any of the commissioners that they want to bring up, or any additional assignments for me to research or look up anything, or ideas for next month's agenda.
Yeah, Teresa.
So we do have a sign project that we're working on. Kenneth and myself, we're trying to restore signs throughout West Ashley, ones that lead into neighborhoods.
We lost your voice.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, you trailed off, Teresa. Teresa.
I'm sorry. I would like to put a sign project that West Ashley Connects is working on, along with Kenneth. If we could put that on the next agenda.
All right.
Email that to Eric as well, so we make sure we got everything. You were breaking up a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll send it to him.
Good. Yes, Councilmember Brady.
Yeah, I just because it came out in the city paper, I was wondering if we could get an update, if anything's been done, or if we've had any movement on the Formula Business District for Avondale.
Yeah,
Yes,
we'll just exchange some emails about that this afternoon. Good timing.
Yes, I have not been in contact with Lauren at yet, as that just came out today, but I will be in contact with her shortly to see where she stands with it. Kind of the last input we gave her on it was that she needed to gather up information from local business owners, and she was supposed to contact city council members directly to discuss things with them. So I'll check on that and see where she's at. The city paper article did mention that she has a draft ordinance, or will have a draft ordinance. I can't remember the exact wording by May, but I will see.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. All right. Going, went. All right. Thank you all very much. We always seem to run over an hour, but that's okay. We cover a lot of business over here, and we'll try to avoid having these meetings after a city council meeting the night before the close. It goes on and on and on. So
It is an unfortunate item, yes. We seem to continually have that.
thank you all very much. All stay safe. Get your vaccine shot.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Talk to you
See
soon.
you.
Bye.